Hey everybody, and welcome back to Simply Sarvis. Actually, welcome to Simply Sarvis. This is the first video that will be going live. I've done a lot of other filming for this channel, so there will be more videos coming out pretty soon, like vlogs, day in the life, things like that. But I wanted to get this video out first so I could do a little bit of explaining about what this channel is going to be about. If you watch my other channel, Mallorie in the Making, you'll know that that channel is primarily used for anything that has to do with weight loss. About 2.5 years ago, about 2.5 years ago, I started a weight loss journey and lost 93 pounds. And Mallorie in the Making became my health related channel. Now, it was my only channel, so there are vlogs on there and things that are really special to Robbie and I. And Robbie is my husband, if you don't watch that channel. And of course, our entire pregnancy journey, us getting engaged and getting married, all of that is over on that channel. But I figured once we started our family, I wanted to start a new channel called Simply Sarvis. Sarvis is our last name. Simply is just a cute little thing to go in front of it, I guess. But this is basically going to be anything that's family related. Anything health related or that's pertaining to mostly me will be on Mallorie in the Making. And of course, I will link that channel on the end screen of this video and also down below. But anything that's family related or has to do with the baby or Robbie and I and the baby will be on this channel. So I figured the perfect video to start this channel would be the birth story of Avery Madeline Sarvis. Right now she is 10 days old. Sometimes I think like, oh my gosh, she's 10 days old. I can't believe she's 10 days old. It's gone by so fast. And sometimes I think to myself, man, it's only been 10 days. She does not like to sleep at night. So it's been a little difficult so far, but we are definitely working it out. But I wanted to start with kind of the birth story, the week before she was born, and talk a little bit about how she came into this world, because I really actually love her birth story. I don't know why you wouldn't love a birth story, because it's, you know, it's like your child coming into the world. But there are just things that are unique to her birth story, and I don't know, it's just kind of fun to look back on. So when I look back on this in years to come, things that I may have forgotten, I will have on tape. Of course, my husband and I did a little bit of vlogging during the labor and delivery, so there is a video on that. It is on Mallorie in the Making. So if you want to see that, head over to that channel. But this is just me explaining how it all went in a little more detail, because of course during that time there were so many things going on that it was kind of chaotic. So let's start on Monday, April 6th. Monday, April 6th, I had my 38-week appointment with my OB. The week before that, I had already been dilated a centimeter. I had been having some contractions, lots of Braxton Hicks. We'd been doing a lot of walking and squats and things. I was ready to have this baby. I had been ready to have that baby since 36 weeks. I was so ready to meet her, and I know that Robbie was too. Plus, at that time, we were a little bit afraid, because if you're watching this a couple years in the future, this is during the pandemic. This is during the coronavirus, during COVID-19. So things that normally would happen in a birth vlog or normally would happen during labor and delivery are not happening, meaning I could only have my husband in the room. And for a short time there, we were told it may just be me in the room with the baby, and my husband wouldn't be able to be there for her delivery. So at that time, we were trying everything to have this baby in a timely manner, but also while she was still healthy. You know, she needed to have her lungs and everything developed, but we really wanted him to be there. Luckily, the Surgeon General came on with an announcement about a week before she was born, saying that no matter what happens, every delivering mom did need to have a support person. So my husband was able to be there. My mom was not, however. So anyway, on our 38-week appointment on April 6th, I went into the doctor hoping that I had dilated a little bit more. I went in by myself, because that was a rule of our OB's office at that point. They were having us wait in the car. They would call us in. We all wore masks. Even the patients wore masks while everything was going on. So at the beginning of the appointment, I had noticed throughout the last couple of days that the baby, Avery, I can call her by her name now, Avery had kind of stopped moving. She would move when I had a contraction, but other than that, she was pretty chill. She was pretty sleepy, and I didn't really know that that was a cause for concern. But when I went into the doctor's office, the nurse asked me, like, how's baby's movement? And I told her, you know, she's really having trouble. She's only moving when I'm having a contraction. And of course that raised concern. So after the doctor came in, he checked me. I had only dilated another 0.5 centimeter, which was kind of disappointing, to be honest, because we had been working really hard to have this baby, like walking, squats, dancing. I mowed the yard. Like, I did all kinds of things to make this baby come. And it just goes to show that they come when they're ready. When he checked me, he also did a membrane sweep. And he didn't tell me he was going to do a membrane sweep, which I'm actually pretty grateful for, because I had heard about a membrane sweep. It's also called a stretch and sweep, or called stripping your membranes, or having your membranes stripped. And I'd heard that it was really painful. So he did it without telling me, and then afterwards was like, oh, I just stripped your membranes. And that was awesome because I didn't have like this tense sensation. I just was like, okay, what's going on? Not super, super painful, but definitely uncomfortable. After that, he told me like, yeah, you may dilate a little bit more because I've just done, you know, a stretch and sweep or a membrane sweep, and you may have some contractions, but I'm going to send you to labor and delivery because we want to make sure that the baby is okay, make sure that she is on track for growth. I hadn't had an ultrasound since the 20-week mark, so it had been a while. I hadn't seen her. And even at our 20-week appointment, I hadn't seen her because we were doing a gender reveal, and the ultrasound tech was a little afraid that she was going to like show us her girl parts. So I hadn't actually seen her since 10 weeks. And so I headed over to labor and delivery, started contracting, realizing like, okay, this is what a real contraction feels like. I was having a lot of back labor at that point. But after we did a BPP, which is basically where they go in and do an ultrasound and they check for movement of like hands, feet, they check for breathing, they check heart, they check all kinds of things. She passed, she did perfectly fine. But after I got home that night, everything had fizzled out. Now, it was kind of a crazy experience because my mom had driven with me to the appointment while my husband was still working from home, and she just waited in the car. So then when they sent me to labor and delivery, my mom had to wait in the car so that Robbie could come in because there was no switching out. So Robbie came in. Of course, the baby was not born that day. Everything was fine, but it was just kind of a crazy, hectic, chaotic time. Tuesday, nothing happened, much to my chagrin. And then Wednesday, I actually woke up. Now, please keep in mind, if you're watching this video, you are probably a mom or about to give birth or have given birth. So this is going to be kind of a TMI video. And for that, I'm sorry. But on Wednesday morning, I woke up, and when I went to the bathroom, I had my bloody show, or what I consider to be my bloody show. We have a really amazing labor and delivery nurse friend who actually helped deliver Avery. And for that, I'm so incredibly grateful. She was the most amazing support. Aside from Robbie was amazing, but she was just an amazing support for both of us because it was our first child, and she was just, it was so special to have her there. I texted her and was like, okay, this is what's happening. Does this sound like a bloody show? She was like, yep, sounds like your bloody show. I, of course, thought the baby was happening and baby was coming that day. I got myself all dressed. I put my hair up and I made it look nice. I wore a dress that day because I figured this is the last day that I'm going to be pregnant. I'm going to have my beautiful baby tonight or tomorrow, and I just want to remember this day as, you know, being my best. Wrong. I continued to have like bloody show for the next couple days, but never ended up contracting or having the baby. Friday, April 10th, so 2 days after I had my bloody show, I had another membrane sweep, or I stripped my membranes, whatever you want to call it. I had another membrane sweep, and this time it was much different. They were not like nice about it, which was totally fine with me. I was so ready for this baby to come. I was like, do what you have to do. They stripped all the layers until we got, you know, they got down to my water, my bag of waters, and told me, you know, your water could break at any minute. If you do squats, if you go for a walk, your water could break. I was ready. I was so excited. I was like, yes, let's go for a walk. Let's squat up and down the stairs. Let's dance. Like, I just want to get this baby out. I'm so ready to have this beautiful little bundle of joy. Not only that, but I had progressed to a 3 at that point. So after the membrane sweep, I started to have contractions. And remember I told you I was going to go for a walk? It didn't happen. The contractions started immediately, pretty much immediately, about 30 minutes after it happened, and they just kept getting stronger. So it was a lot different than the membrane sweep on Monday. I was contracting. They were consistently 4 to 5 minutes apart. They were getting more and more intense. It was getting to the point where I was like, okay, yeah, this is definitely the real thing. Oh my gosh, this is happening. And at my doctor's office, for first-time moms, they use the 5-1-2 rule instead of the 5-1-1 rule. If you're a new mom or you're newly pregnant or don't know what that means, basically they want you to have contractions that are 5 minutes apart, lasting 1 minute. And usually with the 5-1-1, it has to be for an hour long. In my office, though, 5-1-2 for first-time moms, so 5 minutes apart, lasting 1 minute for 2 hours straight. We got to that point, and at that point, I was ready to go. I was like, okay, let's go to the hospital. However, I did not believe that they were actually going to keep us that day. Because of the way that the membrane sweep went on Monday, I figured that the contractions had gotten a lot stronger, but they were about to fizzle out, and that I was going to have to wait. We were scheduled to have an induction on Tuesday, April 14th. So at this point, I'm thinking, we're going to go to the hospital, they're going to check me, my contractions are going to fizzle out, and then they're going to send us home, we're going to have this baby on Tuesday. The contractions really started ramping up at about 8 p.m. and we were in the hospital, like checking in, being admitted into labor and delivery triage at 10:15. We live very close to the hospital though. Took us about maybe 10 minutes to get there. But I was like in a lot of pain at this point. Still not believing they were actually going to keep us. So we went up to labor and delivery. She checked me. I was still at a 3 and I was honestly kind of upset. I was like, are you kidding me? Like 2 hours of really intense contractions, which I know that people go a lot longer, like 36 hours of labor, and I was honestly ready for it, but hoping that wasn't going to be the case. So she asked me, okay, you're at 3 centimeters dilated. You were at 1 centimeter on Monday, or 1.5 centimeter on Monday. I'm going to call the doctor. If she gives you the option, would you rather walk around the hospital and try and dilate or go home? And at that point, like I said, and like I've said a billion times, I was ready to have the baby. So I was like, no, I'm going to try and walk and get progressed to a 4 here before they send me home. Because I didn't want to get home, progress, and then head right back. So she said, okay, and she left and called the doctor. Now, my doctor was not on call that night. It was another doctor from the practice of my OB's office, though, and a doctor that I absolutely love because she helped us a lot when we had our subchorionic hematoma at 10 weeks with the pregnancy. If you want to know a little more about that, I'll link a card up here, but also it's on the Mallorie in the Making channel. But she called her, she came back in and let us know that the doctor did not want us to walk around the hospital because of the pandemic, which I totally understand. So she was going to admit us and we were going to have the baby that night. Friday night, I was exactly 38 weeks and 6 days. So at the stroke of midnight, I was going to be 39 weeks and therefore able to be induced so they could give me Pitocin if they needed to. I was honestly so shocked. I was just, absolutely in awe that they were actually going to keep us and let us have the baby. And I was at that point just like filled with adrenaline. I told my husband, text my mom, let my mom know that we're not coming home. My mom had been staying with us for a couple weeks at that point because my dad works in the medical field and works at a hospital down in my hometown, and we wanted my mom to be able to be here once the baby was born. And if she continued to be around my dad, she could be infected. So she came up and stayed with us, and she's been the most amazing help. And it's been really, really nice having her, and I'm going to bawl my eyes out the day that she leaves. So Robbie texted my mom. They put us in a room and told us that we were having that baby tonight. So at this point, the contractions are still pretty strong, but I'm so filled with adrenaline that it doesn't seem as intense as it did when I was at home. So, they're doing the IV, they're getting me hooked up to fluids, they're having me sign consent forms, Robbie's getting all the stuff brought up and put into the room. Everything's starting to get really, really real. They bring out a birthing ball for me, which was so nice because that was where I was the most comfortable, was bouncing on the birthing ball or standing up. I didn't want to be in the bed, and I had heard in our birthing class that the worst place to be when you're contracting is sitting in a bed. So I was up and moving around. I was bouncing on a birthing ball. I was trying to do anything to kind of alleviate the pain in my back. I wasn't really having much cramping or contracting in the front. It was all in the back. And I've had kidney stones before, and it was very, very, very similar to that. But I will say I think contractions were worse. So I was bouncing on a birthing ball, walking around, trying to stay mobile, but the problem was that Avery was running from the monitor. So every time that I would sit down on the birthing ball, they'd lose her heartbeat. Every time I'd stand up, they'd lose her heartbeat. The only way they could keep her on the monitor is if I was sitting in the bed. And it was getting to the point where it was miserable to be sitting in the bed. So she came in, she checked me again at 1 o'clock, and I was only at a 3 still. I had not progressed any. And so they decided to put me on Pitocin. Now, from what I've heard, Pitocin really ramps up your contractions and makes them really, really intense. And I was a little bit worried about that. But I am also somebody who is not afraid of an epidural. I was not somebody who was planning on doing it naturally. I know myself. I know how I deal with pain. And I was totally okay with having an epidural. If you are somebody who does it naturally, props to you. If you're someone who did it with an epidural or plans to do it with an epidural, props to you. Either way, you're still a mom. You still went through 9 months of pregnancy. You still went through labor. There's no judgment here either way. They did ramp up a little bit, but it wasn't like what I had heard where people say they get put on Pitocin and 10 minutes later it's the most intense pain they've ever had in their entire life. Mine was more like they put me on Pitocin, they ramped me up from a 2 to a 4 to a 6, and it gradually got worse, but it wasn't like all of a sudden I hit a wall. However, I had told Robbie, my goal is to get to 2 o'clock in the morning without an epidural and then do an epidural. Don't ask me why that was my time or why that was my number. I don't know why. I think it was because it would have made 6 hours of contractions. I don't know. I just really wanted to make it to 2 a.m. I wanted to see if I could push to that point. So at about 2:05, I told Robbie, I need my epidural. Like, I'm ready for the epidural. These are so painful. They had me in the bed at that point because they couldn't find the baby's heartbeat. And so I was completely uncomfortable, and there was not going to really be a chance for me to get back up. So I was like, might as well. You know, I made it to 2 o'clock. I'm ready to have my epidural. What I didn't know, and if you are somebody who is about to have a baby, know this, is that they don't just come right in when you say I'm ready for my epidural. They have to hang fluids and give you some like medication. So that took about 30 minutes, and then the anesthesiologist came in. She was so sweet. She was amazing. She was the lady who came and talked to us in our birthing class. So it was nice to see a familiar face, and she walked us through every single portion, every single part. She was really amazing. For me, a lot of people get worried about the epidural and think like, oh, it's going to hurt. I was terrified. I was more terrified for the epidural than I was for the contractions. Don't ask me why that was. So I waited long enough, and I waited until my contractions were strong enough that even the big needle going in and the lidocaine shot, they did not hurt near as much as the contractions were hurting at that point. And then it took like 15 minutes, 10-15 minutes, and I was like zen. It felt so much better. And then at that point, when they came in to check me before they did the epidural, they realized that I was at a 4. So I had finally progressed to a 4 at that point, and it's about, you know, it was probably 2:30 in the morning, and I had my epidural right around 3 o'clock in the morning. So at that point, they told me, get some rest. We are going to put a peanut ball in between your legs so that we can try and get the baby to come down a little bit more. But my right leg was almost completely dead. I could move my foot. I could not move my leg, and it was frustrating me. I kept trying to, and of course, it's dead. My left leg, I could have done the splits. Like, it was so easy. I could lift it. I could do whatever I needed to. So it was good to help with, like, when they needed to move me from side to side because I could use my left leg. My right leg, though, was just dead. It was gone. So they came in about every hour and flipped me from one side to the other with the peanut ball in between my legs to try and get me to dilate a little bit more. I tried to take a nap. It was really hard, the adrenaline running through my body. I was so excited to finally meet Avery. I was just not able to sleep very well at all, but I tried my best. At 6 o'clock in the morning or 6:30 in the morning, our friend Lisa came in, and she was our nurse from that point on, and she was amazing. She checked me. I had gone from like a 4 to maybe a 4.5, and it was like 6 o'clock in the morning. So at that point, we started talking about the possibility of a C-section because it was taking me so long to dilate. They said that if I wasn't ready to push by 6 p.m. that evening, that they were probably going to have to do a C-section. Honestly, I was totally fine with that. I was totally fine with whatever way it took to get the baby out healthily. I wasn't scared of a C-section at all, which is surprising because I would think that I would be more nervous, but I was not scared of a C-section. I was more scared to push the baby out than to have the C-section. So at that point, I was like, that's fine. I don't mind having a C-section. Now, looking back, I'm very happy with the way that things went, and I'll explain that in just a second. So it's 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm only at like a 4.5, maybe a 5. We're talking about a C-section. And at this point, they realize that they want to go ahead when the doctor gets there that morning and break my water and see if that will help things along a little bit. So they told me, take a nap, go to sleep. At this point, I was able to sleep a little bit. The doctor came in about 9 o'clock. She broke my water. I didn't feel anything. A lot of people say they felt like a rush of water. Robbie said they had a whole bunch of towels like shoved up there. I couldn't see. And I didn't feel anything. No rush of water, no nothing. She was like, your water's broken. Great. I didn't know any different. So they also put in an IUP, which is an intrauterine... Let me look it up. I can't remember what it's called. So they ended up putting an IUP or an IUPC in, which is basically just a catheter that goes into your uterus. Again, I did not feel a single thing. And it just basically measures how strong the contractions are and makes sure that everything's good in there. They also put a monitor on the top of Avery's head. Now, one thing that I will mention is beforehand, when I had seen and heard people talk about these kinds of things, I always thought to myself, I'll never have to have an IUP. I'll never have to have a monitor on the baby's head. I'll never have to use a peanut ball. I'm never going to have back labor. And not that I wasn't prepared for that, or not that I wasn't thinking it would happen to me. It just would never cross my mind. Like, oh, that won't be me. You know, I never thought, oh, I'm definitely going to have that. The reason that I mention it and say that is because learning about that in class was kind of scary. Like thinking about them putting a monitor on the top of my baby's head and putting a catheter up inside me and all this kind of stuff. The thought of that was actually more scary than it actually happening. If they had not told me they had done it, I would have never known. I didn't feel it. I didn't see it. I didn't know. So just know that if that's happening to you, it's not as scary as it sounds. Trust your doctor, trust your nurses. They know exactly what they're doing. So anyway, that happened at 9 a.m. They came back in and checked me at 11:30, and I was dilated to a 7 or an 8. So everything happened very quickly after they broke my water. I went back to sleep, and at 12:30 they woke me up, and I was complete, as Lisa said. I was ready to push. This is when I got so incredibly nervous. I was already shaking. I had been shaking and like having like the labor shakes since probably right before I had my epidural, so 2:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. And they were telling me like, that's a good sign. That means that labor is really progressing well. So I still had the shakes, but when they told me it was time to push, I think they like doubled in intensity because number one, I had the labor shakes and I was so incredibly nervous. I don't know what it was. The thought of just like pushing made me nervous. They told me first time moms usually take 2 hours to push to get the baby out because you've never done it before. So that I think made me a little bit nervous. The fact that she was going to, we were going to be doing that for 2 hours. I was afraid I was going to get too tired. I don't know. So they decided to do some practice pushes. Lisa, got me all ready, got me all stirruped and ready to go. Robbie got in his position. My husband is not super like needle friendly or blood friendly. So my dad had told him like, you stay up on the pitcher's mound. Like you don't need to be down there to see what's going on. I did not want to see what was going on. So Robbie stayed right here and, honestly, and Lisa was down at the foot, but I don't really remember much else. There was just so much going on. So we started practice pushing at 12:30, and after probably 6 or 7 pushes, I would say probably 6 or 7 pushes, Lisa told me like, do not push, because if you push, we're gonna have a baby without a doctor. So I was like, oh my gosh. So she was like, if you need to push, like give a little push, but do not push a lot. She was asking Robbie like, do you want to see your head? And Robbie's like, no, 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 no. She asked me, do you want to see your head? And I was like, I'm good. No, thank you. That just was not my cup of tea. I know that sometimes they'll bring in a mirror for you. That would have freaked me out. So I'm super glad that they did not do that. So then the doctor comes in and she's like rushing to put her stuff on because we're about to have a baby. The doctor sits down in front of me. She's ready to catch the baby. After 2 pushes, out came the baby. So it was really fast. We pushed her out in about 25 minutes versus 2 hours, which I was so thankful for. She came out mad, screaming, which they all come out screaming, but she was loud. She was very upset to have been like pulled out of her warm spot. And she cried for a long time, but she was so beautiful just even from the beginning. And they're usually really, really swollen and stuff in the face, of course, and red, but she was just so beautiful. And at my hospital, they let you do skin to skin for about an hour or so before they actually weigh the baby. She nursed a little bit, or she tried to nurse a little bit. And we did skin to skin. We were FaceTiming my mom at that point so she could see. And it was just a really beautiful time. It was an amazing experience. I'm really thankful for how easy my delivery went. Looking back, if I had had to have a C-section, I would have been just fine. But I realize now that it is so much more of a recovery for a C-section. And so I'm thankful that I had a vaginal birth. And my heart goes out to all of you who do have C-sections, because I can't imagine like taking care of a brand new baby and recovering from surgery like that. So my heart goes out to you. But after about an hour, they took her off of me and they weighed her. And I had said, if you watch the birth vlog, I say in there, I would just love to have an 8-pound baby. And she was 8 pounds even, 8 pounds, 0 ounces. And she was 20 inches long. Still quite the screamer. She has the lungs of a singer. I'm a singer. She's definitely got the soprano lungs. And she'll definitely let you know when she doesn't like something. And in just a second, Robbie's going to bring her up so that y'all can see Little Miss Averie Madeline. But yeah, that was her birth story. Her birth story was actually super amazing, even despite the pandemic and COVID-19 and coronavirus. I am so incredibly thankful to the team of nurses, especially Lisa. I hope she watches this. Especially Lisa, because she was the most amazing support for Robbie and I during this time when our family couldn't be around. And she was family. She is family to us. She and her husband and their kids, they're family to us. And she just, it was just so sweet to see her getting to help deliver the baby and then come in and help us. And she was just absolutely amazing. So Lisa, if you're watching this, I think I already said this, but thank you. My camera decided to shut off. We've been having issues with this. But anyway, I think Robbie's actually bringing the baby up right now. But what I was saying before my camera cut off was thank you, Lisa, so much for your support. It meant the world to us. We cannot wait for you to deliver our next baby. Not anytime soon, but we are super excited for you to deliver our next baby. And here comes Miss Avery Madeline. Now, come here, precious. Can I take your blankie off? Say hello. She has, as you can see, lots and lots of dark hair. That comes from her daddy. I had no hair when I was born, and it's even, yes, are you done? It's even the color of her dad's too. It's starting to lighten up a little bit. I don't know if it's because she's not, I don't know, she doesn't go outside all the time. Who knows? Starting to lighten up just a little bit. She has blue eyes, although she doesn't keep them open as much as she should. Except if it's nighttime. As you can tell, she keeps her hands up by her face at all times. She's trying to hold this bottle herself. I can't really see if she's spilling. Like I said, she's a little piglet. She eats a lot. She's already back up to birth weight, but anyway.
Above birth weight.
Yeah, she's above birth weight now. She's a good car rider. She's been in the car several times to go to 2 pediatrician appointments. She went to San Antonio with us. Don't worry, she didn't get out of the car. Coming home from the hospital, she just falls asleep, which is really good. I wish she would sleep at night, but if that means we have to drive around in the car for a couple nights, that's not happening. Never mind. So I'm going to finish feeding this little tiny baby and get her changed for the day and then back down for another nap in about an hour. But thank you guys so much for watching. Welcome to the new channel. Welcome to Simply Sarvis. We are so excited that you are here. We want to thank you guys so much for watching. We love you all, and God bless ya.